Hi, and welcome back. Today's story isn't just about a predator in uniform. She thought prison was rock bottom. It wasn't. Freedom was. In this story, you'll step into the hidden underworld, where human trafficking doesn't begin in dark alleys, but with a love letter, a friendly deposit, or a ride home from prison. It's a system so silent, so invisible, that even those paid to protect choose to look away. Because behind every mugshot is a woman who once danced, once believed, once trusted someone she shouldn't have. And sometimes the real sentence doesn't start behind bars, it starts the moment she walks free. What if the only person waiting outside those prison gates is the one who plans to own her next? Let me take you inside a world where the bars may open, but the trap only tightens. This is the cycle almost no one escapes. Disneyland is a child's paradise, but for human traffickers, it's a goldmine. While parents bring their kids for a day of joy, some men leave the park to buy something far darker. Young women are hunted right at the entrance gates. In Orlando, amid the sunshine and family vacation, laughter lies one of America's largest human trafficking hubs. It's not a lack of security, but an excess of demand, men with money time and no morals. In Washington Shores, a quiet residential area west of Orlando, a seemingly ordinary house hid a chilling secret. When investigators shattered its windows, they didn't find furniture, but people trapped, terrified, and waiting to be sold. That was the last time they caught Vincent Hale, the 75-year-old dubbed Orlando's Shadow Kingpin. He didn't wield guns or hunt victims himself. He orchestrated it all from a laptop, his method recruiting prostitutes straight from Ocala's women's prison. Women with histories of prostitution addiction or homelessness were helped after release, a place to stay, a promise, then a trap. In that house, his team scoured prostitution websites all day, selecting faces, writing letters to lure women out. No threats or whips were needed. Just one question. How much do you think this face could earn? Anyone can send a letter to someone in prison, and sometimes a single piece of paper is enough to open a door or lure someone into a trap with no escape. I was abused at 16. I've never been loved properly, one woman wrote, and Donnie Ray began to write back, each letter a whisper weaving loneliness with hope. You won't have to sell yourself anymore. If you want to use drugs, that's your choice. I'll pick you up. You'll have a home, a bed, love. Everything she'd ever longed for was captured in a few lines, and she believed him. But when the door of that house closed behind her, she realized she'd left one prison only to enter another, colder, heavier, without bars, but with the constant threat of death. I believed if I tried to escape, he'd kill me, she said. Vincent Hale was no failed lover. He was the first in America convicted for luring women directly from prison to exploit them, his notoriety owed only to being caught. Yet his case was not unique. A year-long investigation by The Guardian revealed a grim truth: predators like him are not alone. As the number of female inmates in the U.S. rises, prisons have become prime hunting grounds for those who need no violence or borders, just a sweet word, a promise, and a desperate woman. Human trafficking doesn't always involve shadowy smuggling rings. Sometimes it's as simple as a letter, a lie, and a life stolen in plain sight. Tracy started using cocaine at 14, not to rebel, but to escape fleeing a loveless home and memories no one would believe were real. Her first boyfriend, a 24-year-old, promised love if she pleased him and his friends. A child desperate for acceptance, she sacrificed herself, but that promised love quickly turned into a transaction, trading her body for the feeling of existing. From there, her life spiraled like falling dominoes. She hit the streets, lived on them, and stood on corners each day, controlled by men who profited from her existence. Sometimes I felt like garbage, she said. I just wanted to die, waiting for my body to catch up with that wish. Savannah endured decades of addiction, manipulation, and rejection. Once beaten so badly, her face was bruised and her lips torn just before her final arrest. Her first mugshot at 24 wasn't because she was evil, but because she had no one left to defend her. I used to think my only value was my body, Miriam said, another survivor of domestic abuse whose life plummeted. Unchecked abuse led to addiction, addiction to prostitution, and prostitution to control. She lost contact with her parents and children for over 3 years, drowning in guilt so deep that each Mother's Day drove her to use more drugs, as if to stop her heart from beating. On those days, the trafficker gave me extra drugs to keep me from running back home, she said. She was raped, beaten, and humiliated countless times, and like hundreds of women arrested for crimes orchestrated by the very men who controlled her. No one traced the root of her pain. No one asked why. There was only the law, its cold red stamp, and a charge. Sometimes people don't fall because of choices the story warns, but because they were pushed by a past no one sees. Each mugshot is a framed sigh, but behind those frozen faces are girls who once wanted nothing more than to be loved truly just once. She pulled over at the edge of the iron fence where wild grass grew like unhealed scars. Right here. This is where I was arrested. 14 years ago, it was an empty lot, no barriers, no cameras, just a familiar meeting point where people came to sell, buy, or spiral into an inescapable abyss. The cops swooped in, pinned us against the fence, and that was it. I went to jail, she recalled. It seemed like the end, but in truth, it was only the beginning. The day she was arrested, her name, mugshot charges, address, and release date were plastered online, a standard procedure in many U.S. states that handed human traffickers a digital hunting ground. From behind computer screens, they scoured records targeting women with charges like prostitution, drug addiction, or homelessness. Then initiated contact with letters, friendly inquiries, and promises, each beginning with sweet words aimed at someone desperate to be believed. Returning to that place for the first time, she wondered, would I walk away free, or would they keep even my shoes? The cold click of the prison gate slamming shut still haunted her, etched into her memory, alongside the dread of not knowing when she'd step out. But worse than prison was the realization that even after release, she was still being watched, a living file, a potential commodity, a chosen target. For Savannah, the same place that once confined her was where the first letters from traffickers arrived, marking not the start of freedom, but the end of it. Savannah returns not because she's trapped again, but to warn others about the snare that once held her in darkness. So many people don't understand what trafficking is. I didn't either for a long time, she says, her voice steady, no longer trembling. A pimp, a boyfriend, anyone, if they profit from your body, they're a trafficker. And the scariest part? They're no different from the Johns. Same choking hands. Those men don't go to prison. They sit outside writing letters, waiting for your release to commodify you again. She pauses, eyes piercing. And you think it's love. Despite Savannah and the prison's efforts, traffickers slip through the system's cracks. In many states, anyone can deposit money into an inmate's account, using it as bait. I care. I have money. You're worth something. A single deposit, $129.2903, more than yesterday, more than anyone ever gave, can spark a cycle of control. Behind bars, the loneliness bites. He says he's not in it for money, but sends letters daily, with weird propositions Savannah shares. Another guy sent cash, so I kept replying. Tracy Rachel Richard Rawls, who's been in and out of this prison 22 times, adds a stranger offers money or a visit. Another says if we get close, he'll help when I'm out. She gives a hollow laugh. And when I got out, they started demanding. In prison without money for coffee smokes or packages, you're not just broke, you're invisible. You see others with parcels, food, someone who remembers them. But you, only the clang of iron doors and a world forgetting you exist. Without them, I had no one, Tracy admits. Family cut me off. So even knowing it was wrong, I clung to a voice out there. Letters like tiny cracks in the prison walls seem harmless, but always lead to a door with no escape. Predatory exploitation in women's prisons is no longer an isolated incident. From Florida to Texas, a silent pattern operates where traffickers target, manipulate, and exploit women behind bars. In Texas, The Guardian interviewed former ringleaders who confirmed what many suspected, but dared not voice. Want to recruit a girl, write to someone in prison. Or find someone with a sister or cousin inside, they'll make introductions, they revealed. Send a few lines, some cash. Once she's touched, it's done. You've got a new one. For many incarcerated women, a small package or a kind word is enough to feel valued, fostering loyalty, not from love, but from the rare sensation of being seen in a place the world has abandoned. Not all traffickers are the same. One woman who once led a string of girls called it the art of casting roles. You've got the boyfriend pimp, gentle, sweet. The violent pimp using threats, beatings, control. The sophisticated pimp playing family or partner, and the addict pimp forcing others to work for drug money. She laughed, saying, "I never called myself a pimp. I just saw myself as a woman, loved by many. They loved me, so they'd do anything, even sell themselves to make me happy." For these predators, it's not abuse. It's discipline, order, a business with rules. Sometimes, I had to use force, one admitted. Nothing serious, just a light slap, a little choke, a warning. I didn't beat them like street strangers, they were my girls. I loved them. But if they disobeyed, they had to be punished. They call it love, but it's shackles. Yet women in prison starved for affection, lacking support, still walk into it believing they're entering a relationship. I didn't force them to do anything. I just showed them how to do it better. Because honestly, when I met them, they were already in that life, a trafficker once said, as if he were blameless. He didn't command, he merely suggested. And they, women pushed to the brink, nodded. Society labels them prostitutes, convicts them, and locks them away. But no one asks, how did they start? Who led them there? And when they want out, who helps them move forward? When a woman leaves prison, her past trails her like a shadow with a rap sheet, a charge, a stain, a word that slams every door shut: prostitution. Imagine sitting across from a crisply dressed white man at a job interview, trying to explain why you were arrested, insisting you've changed. You see that look, cold, judgmental, final. No one hires, no one rents. No one offers a chance, and when hunger bites and options vanish, you return to the only place that ever opened its doors, the streets. In Florida, Vincent Hale, despite a prior sexual assault conviction, was allowed to show up at prisons picking up newly released women without question. No investigation, no oversight. John Weekins, a former guard at Lowell's women's prison, warned, "That guy keeps coming. Every time someone's released, he's there." His warnings were ignored as if it were normal. Sometimes when women were released at night, Rawls waited outside the gate like family, but in truth, like an owner. Some nights he arrived by taxi. Others he waited in his own car. Then came the opener, "You okay?" followed by the trap, "I can help." He came here 3 times last month. And next week, he'll be back. It wasn't a rumor. It was a warning. But warnings aren't always heeded. Teresa Davidson, a correctional officer at a women's prison, overheard a transaction unfolding within the stone walls. Not drugs, not a riot, but human trafficking between the incarcerated and those outside their confinement. I told the commander. I told the higher-ups. They responded with a shrug. No one wanted extra work. They just wanted a quiet day and to go home. Teresa didn't give up. She spoke to colleagues, but 99% of them either didn't know what trafficking was, or worse, knew and didn't care. Who are you to interfere was the attitude she faced, not from criminals, but from those paid to protect the inmates. In the US, no law dictates who can pick up a woman leaving prison. No checks, no verification, no questions. Here's $50 civilian clothes, your bag of belongings, and I need to see you get into a car with someone. That's it. That's how America sends a woman from prison back into society, or more accurately, into the hands of those who landed her there. Rachel remembers that day vividly. Donnie Ray picked her up, bringing 2 sweaters and a pair of boots for her to choose from, seeming caring, thoughtful. But once the car door closed, he handed her a beer and drugs. On my first day out, I was smoking crack again. The first 2 weeks felt like a honeymoon, eating laughing promises. Then one day, everything changed. You're costing me too much. Now you have to pay it back. Rachel stood on this very street corner where you're looking now with a vacant stare waiting for the next man to pull up. I don't like remembering it, but it's part of me. A part that even after escaping leaves deep scars in her memory. Rachel is still alive. That alone is a miracle. It's a strange feeling to know you're going back to a safe place. No more going back. No more selling your body. Not because you have to, but because it's now just the past. That girl had just been released. The reporter recognized her. They had met inside. "Hey, sweetheart, how are you doing?" She wrapped her arms around the woman, trembling. "I'm alive, and I still love, even if few still love me." The problem is, not everyone gets that lucky. Some, like Tracy, who once received letters behind bars, are now back on the streets. No place to stay, no recovery center, no way out. Only one door remains open, the tiny intake shelter Savannah runs on her own. There they find a long-sleeve shirt, an old pair of shoes, a hot pack of noodles. But more than that, they find eyes that don't judge. "I can't close the door on someone just because they've been arrested 20 times, Savannah says, because who knows? Maybe the 27th time is the one that sticks. The day they finally wake up. Rose, a former addict, whispers, "I'm tired of going in and out. I don't want to die, but I don't know how to live again." She breaks down. No one wakes up and chooses to destroy their life. "I was once a child. I used to dance. I had a family. It's just, somewhere along the way, everything got lost." Loretta, once a woman who stood on the corner, who was bought and sold, who spent years away from her daughter, has returned. Not as a criminal, but as a mother, a grandmother, a survivor. "I used to be locked up on the other side of this building. Now I work here, helping other women find the road I never had." She walks her granddaughter across the yard of the old prison, a place that once held her darkest nightmares. Now it's the beginning of something better. Human trafficking doesn't begin with chains. It begins with loneliness, with a false promise, with a glance someone mistakes for love. But healing doesn't begin with another sentence. It begins with one person who believes you still deserve to start again, no matter how many times you've been broken. They didn't need chains, just a letter, a promise, a woman no one believed in. Because the real failure isn't just the predators, it's the silence that lets them thrive. A system where survivors are judged, not heard, where being broken is seen as proof that you deserved it. But the truth is, no one chooses to be sold, and no one heals by being ignored. If this story made you pause, speak, comment below, share it. Ask your lawmakers who's waiting outside our prisons and who's watching them. Human trafficking doesn't always look like chains. Sometimes it looks like help.